some of the topics we discuss may sound a little bit more scripted because we actually do know what we're talking about, and that's why we kind of brought it up in the front end. Like, I have studied translation. I'm not great at it anymore, but I have studied a lot of translation. So if we get into a topic about translation, I actually do have a decent amount of knowledge. And as Adam said, he studied international relations, right? Is that what it was called? Okay, yeah. Mm-hmm. And he's also studied religion. So there are some topics in those that will sound a lot more polished in our knowledge. But all that to say that this is a very much mostly opinions, I guess, how we would say it. There will be some facts strewn in there, and we will make mistakes at times, and we'll try to correct those if we note them, or if someone else notes them for us, and we'll be like, oops, my bad. But we want to say, like, we're not trying to give out like advice, and we're not trying to tell you what is true. We're just telling you where we're coming from and what we believe and what we see, what we think. So there's our little disclaimer that we are not speaking from a
authoritative.
We're not authorities. And we also understand, like, this isn't a fresh new podcast that no one's ever thought of, like just two people talking about whatever, off the cuff, weekly, bi-weekly, or monthly, whatever. That is not a fresh idea, because in podcasting, there's no original idea. We get that. Everybody's already done it, because all you need is a microphone and at least one person, and you can make a podcast as long as you know how to talk for 45 or so minutes and listen to airplanes in the background for 45 or so minutes.
So near an airport, deal with it. Okay.
I am actually not too far from an airport as well, but you won't hear them that loud. Isn't there a song about watching airplanes? Isn't that a country song from like 10 years ago?
Well, yeah, and then there's the B.O.B. song, right, with Haley Williams and Eminem.
Because everybody remembers the version with Eminem. That was everybody's favorite version. It's like at the Oscars. This is going to date when this was recorded. It was like at the Oscars last week, where when he was playing "Lose Yourself," everybody was like, "Oh yeah, this is a song that came out this year."
What? People said that?
Well, no, I mean, like, the idea of everybody was like, "Why is this song being played? It's 2020, right? It's not 2001." I don't know when the song came out originally.
Yeah, but he was like, what did he say? He said that, like, okay, so when he won the Oscar for Lose Yourself back in like 2003 or whatever it was, 2002.
Yeah. See, we didn't fact check this.
No, this is just rambling into a topic. But he was like, he just stayed home from the Oscars. He didn't think he was gonna win. Then when he found out he won, he was like ecstatic, but he never got a chance to like perform it. So he was given the offer this year to perform it. So deal with it. He performed his biggest song at the Oscars. So what, people?
No, I mean, it's not a big deal. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. It's just, it was weird, and I don't know why the Oscars were like, "Hey, will you perform this 20-year-old song for us?" I mean, it was really cool to see how many people still knew all the lyrics.
Who was the dude that was falling asleep during it? I don't remember.
Who is that? Famous director, Martin Scorsese.
Yeah, falling asleep during it.
I mean,
his daughter's like, "No, he really likes the song." Like, yeah, okay, sure he does.
Yeah. Martin Scorsese, I don't think he actually ever sleeps, so he probably just sleeps through the entire awards programs, because he's like, "This is the best time I get. Someone will knock me awake if they need to be. I have to do nothing." But yeah, there's so many people bump into it, some of which I'm pretty sure are younger than the song.
Well, yeah, but I mean, so it's a classic.
That's kind of cool that song has lived as long as it has. I mean, it's
Have you heard his new album yet?
I have heard nothing off of his new album, I don't think. No, wait, I heard one song. His song about gun control.
Oh, Darkness?
Yes. That's a topic, maybe. That video.
I mean, I have differing opinions on gun control. Let's put it on the list.
Yeah. Differing opinions from yourself or from him?
From him, right?
Okay.
Or from like the majority of people. Like, well, I mean, okay, not the majority. I don't know what the majority thinks, because every poll is skewed. So
Yeah, here's the thing about the majority. The majority of people don't normally count, and I mean this is probably a topic for another day. It's just whoever votes, which the voters are not the majority, so nobody ever cares what the majority thinks.
well, the majority of the people are the ones that don't vote, right?
Yeah,
So if
and
you
the
look at
majority, yeah,
so if you look at election results, most people don't even vote. Like, why bother? Like, okay, so if I'm registered to vote in Tennessee, and so are you, and if I vote Libertarian or conservative, my vote is basically, or I'm sorry, if I vote Libertarian or Democrat, my vote is basically invalidated by the fact that the majority of people in the state are either not voting or they're voting Republican.
except for like in super local elections, I will say. So if we're talking about school or judges, school district or school, whatever they're called, people that do things at schools,
Right.
so whatever you vote for, like the small elections, like the community wise, like county wise, but also like within the county, there are these like districts and you vote for people there. Those are ones that really do matter because there's so few people in that. I say that living in a city where my district is like 4,000 people, I think, or something like that, or 4,000 people vote in my district. So I get that it doesn't really come down to my vote, but the smaller elections are really where your vote matters more than like the bigger
Mm-hmm.
elections. Because like if we talk about politics in like Ohio or Pennsylvania, and those are the states that really matter, those are the swing states. It's really like 3 or 4 counties in those states that swing the entire election.
Mm-hmm.
So if we get into, which I assume we will, and we will get into reasons why I don't like talking about politics, um, which we can at any point. We'll get into more of like what actually, where does your vote matter versus where it doesn't, and uh, more U.S. type stuff. Yeah, if you're a your vote doesn't matter either way, right? Because even the people who are voting Republican, does it matter in the state of Tennessee? Because the Republican is going to win,
Right.
except for occasion that we get a Democratic governor, like not our current governor, not our previous governor, but like the last 2 governors before that were Democrats, I think. Or
Mm-hmm.
no, it was one governor, and then it's not important. We went like Republican, Democrat for a while.
So part of that, I don't know if maybe there's like a few counties in Tennessee that lean Democrat, and I think maybe so. There's what Davidson, Shelby, Knox County, perhaps,
Yeah,
and
I think Hamilton. So we should say what these counties are for those who are not county-wise note, who don't understand like Tennessee counties, because none of these, except for one, actually tells you what city it's in. So Davidson is Nashville. Shelby County is Memphis. Those are the 2 largest cities, depending on how you count. Nashville's either larger or Memphis is larger. We don't have to get into what I mean by how you count. Then the 3rd largest city is Knox County, and that's where Knoxville is. And then the 4th largest city is Hamilton County, which is where Chattanooga is. And those are the 4 largest cities. And then you have Montgomery County, which is Clarksville / Fort Campbell, Kentucky, where most of the people who work in Fort Campbell or are stationed at Fort Campbell live actually in Montgomery County. And that's the 5th largest, I think. I think I'm
so
doing that right.
is Rutherford County or Murfreesboro, is that switched over? Do you think that's switched over to being Democratic yet? Because I feel like it's progressing in that area. If not already, it's progressing in that direction.
I mean, historically, it's only been like Davidson County and Shelby County. And when we say Democrat, we don't mean liberal. I will say that too, because Shelby County votes Democrat, but it's also not a liberal county. They will vote for the Democrat, but they will not vote for liberal social policies necessarily.
Mm.
So if you had like gay rights on the agenda, you sometimes see a different vote or a closer vote than like Davidson County, which is a very liberal city. And that has to do with it's a college town in one way, and it's also like a city of a bunch of people who moved into it. There are a lot of people from Davidson County who live in Davidson County who aren't from Davidson County. They're from all over America. by America, I mean the U.S. We can get into a long story on denonyms, but denonyms meaning the name of where you're from, like Tennessean, American, Canadian. But so Davidson County is more liberal because you have there are a lot of colleges around here, and say Murfreesboro has a MTSU, which is the largest college, I believe, in Tennessee.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe still.
I think it is, yeah.
I think it is. UT Knox, which is out in Knox County, of course, is, I think, number 2. But so Davidson County is very liberal. And then you do have Rutherford County, which I think is getting more liberal. Same for like Chattanooga. Knoxville is a weird case. I don't know if Knoxville is liberal. I hear Chattanooga is moving more liberal, but I don't know about Knoxville. Knoxville is always Knoxville.
So do you think with the growth of population in Tennessee, especially with the greater Nashville area, somewhere down the line, there's going to be a swing where the entire state just starts swinging left?
I don't
Especially
think so.
as the older generations start to die off?
I don't think so, truthfully, because I think what we're forgetting, like, we have this idea that everything is, as time goes on, people tend to be more liberal with policies, like as time in general goes on. But then we hit a moment in history where it just kind of reverts. Like the Romans were very open with so many things, mostly sexually and religiously. And then when the Christians took over, everything got super conservative again. So it's not like the Romans were really, really conservative, and then we've progressed for 2,000 years. We actually have regressed, progressed, quote unquote. But I think like what is the conservative platform and what is the liberal platform will shift over time, and it will kind of still line up because you'll go for where you get votes. And I think like you'll see that. I think you'll see in some ways they'll either both swing to the middle or they'll swing to the edges, which right now is kind of what I see in modern politics. Like the conservatives are trying to hit their super conservative base, and the Democrats are trying to hit super liberal base. But they might swing back to the middle, or the Republicans might shift a little bit to the right, because the conservative vote historically did not think women or black people had the right to vote, and now they don't. You know, so I think it's a matter.
Okay.
Was that a way long discussion?
No. That last part where you said, okay, so there was a point in time when conservatives didn't believe that blacks and women should have the right to vote. What do you say after that?
Oh, I said now I don't. I said it wrong. And now they don't believe that anymore. They think that women and black people and minorities should have the right to vote, at least on paper.
Right.
Some conservative people, I'm not saying all conservative people, but there are some conservative people who think that women should not vote, which is weird. Those are like the super conservative people that we just generally just throw out of the topic.
Yeah, these people exist. Like we've like met these people, and then living in Tennessee for as long as I have, that we've met these people, and they exist, and they're adamant about their viewpoint, and they'll vote their viewpoint. But they don't make it like public, I guess, that their viewpoints are this way.
And sometimes they won't even vote for like the Republican. They won't vote for like the Republican president because they think he or she, well, it's always been he, I think, is too liberal. And this is like there are versions of the Catholic Church that think the Pope is too liberal, so they don't follow the Pope. Who thinks the Pope is too liberal? I mean, this Pope, I guess. Pope.
Francis.
Pope. Thank you, Pope Francis. Some people say he's too liberal, but these are people who thought Pope John Paul II was too liberal, or Pope Benedict, who was probably a pretty mainline conservative pope, was too liberal.
So what do you think about Pope Francis? I'm just curious because like my thought process is he's doing everything he can to help the Catholic Church like save face in society, and like maintain its foothold in society and hold on to like a dying thing.
I think Pope Francis is doing some things that are really, really good for the Catholic Church moving it forward. Like, he cares about the poor, which is, believe it or not, a very Christian idea that is not widely practiced in the Christian Church, unfortunately. I don't want to necessarily get into my knowledge of that yet, but or did I just?
Well, I
Did
think
I
we need
just
to. I think we need to, at some point in the future, go into breaking down what we mean by the Christian Church and
yes.
sort of distinguishing internal, disputes that have arisen over the years.
Yeah, I think right now when I say the Christian Church, I mean any group that says they are followers of Jesus of Nazareth, or followers of Jesus Christ, however they want to say it. I'm doing a very loose definition of it, which I think is appropriate because they all call themselves Christians. So what am I to say that they're not a Christian?
Would that count Messianic Jews?
See, that gets into something like
See? Yeah.
that is wild. I would say yes. If you believe Jesus is the Messiah, then by definition, you believe that Jesus is the Christ, and Christian is one who is a Christ follower. I mean, that's not exactly where the etymology of Christian comes from, but etymologies generally mean crap when it comes to what definitions are.
Mm-hmm.
But it means a follower of Jesus, or a follower of the Christ, or follower of the Messiah. So yeah, I would say that Messianic Judaism, that sounds so weird, but I guess I don't know what their official religious.
Well, they're not Christians. I've known Messianic Jews, and they will adamantly say, "I'm not a Christian. I reject that label. I'm a Messianic Jew. I practice Judaism. I live by the Old Testament, or about the Hebrew Bible. But at the end of the day, we're Jews, but we accept the notion that Jesus was the Messiah."
Yeah. So it gets, this is where religion is hard to define. It's like if I ask you to define religion and I give you 10,000 words and a year to do it, you're not going to come back with a definition you probably are happy with. You're going to come back with a definition, but I think at the end of the day, you might not be happy with it. Like, it still has problems because it's forgetting about this particular part. And so defining religious sects, SECTS,
Right.
groups of religions, is also very messy. Like, none of this is easy. It's, like defining political groups. None of this is easy. As you said, like libertarian. Is a libertarian a conservative or a liberal?
Well, I guess it depends on the topic, because if you're this is all right. So I just want to get into this real quick. We're kind of bouncing all over the place, but this is kind of like our introductory episode, so we can do whatever we want.
Yes, we can. Now watch us drink vodka and throw.
I want to talk about the political spectrum real quick, because I think there's a lot of misconceptions about the political spectrum and where American politics falls in the political spectrum. Because the popular notion is that American politics goes by a left-right dichotomy. Like, left is liberal, socialism, taking care of everybody, nanny state, and then the right is freedom-loving, gun-loving, Christian. You know what I mean? And the thought process is that those two things are completely polar opposite of one another. But the reality is, I think the political spectrum is the more, it doesn't matter what your passion is or what your motive is, the more power you want to give the state, the more left you are, the more authoritarian you are. The more power you want to reserve from the state, the more to the right you are, the more libertarian you are. And I think if you look at things in that way, then Democrats and Republicans actually fall on one end way more than they do on the other end, because both parties want the state to have an extreme amount of control and power over different things, but they want the state to have that power, and they want to use the money from taxes to pay for the things that they want them to pay for, when the reality is they're both like brother or sister. And then libertarians are over here on the other end of the spectrum, like we want to withhold that power from the state, and we want to, reserve freedoms for ourselves and allow ourselves to decide. And if we decide to build small communities, we want our communities to be able to decide for ourselves how to govern ourselves. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I think you do hit a point there that we always talk about very conservative and very liberal people, and if we pull back, like, you know how you see Earth is a giant sphere, and then you pull back and show the solar systems, like the Earth and the Moon are, if what is it the saying, like if you have a basketball, I learned this from Apollo 13. I don't know if it's accurate, but it's pretty darn close. But if you take a basketball, you wad up a piece of paper. No, that's not right. But if you take like a small ball, a tennis ball, what is it? It's a tennis ball and a basketball approximately, and you put them like 20 feet apart, and that's how far the Earth and the Moon is to scale. And that looks so far apart. But when you look at it in the grand scheme of how large our solar system is, they would be on the same pixel for a large computer screen. And so
right.
they're not that far apart. And I guess like our modern day in the US, Republican versus Democrat, are probably on that same pixel.
Right.
Whereas libertarian, as you're saying, is a little bit, and probably not that much, truthfully, to the right. I'm pointing to
I
the
guess it
left
really
in my own.
depends on your perspective and what, like, how far down the road of effectively anarchism you want to
Yeah,
travel.
that's true.
Because if you can go from being a minarchist to where I think that the government should have a limited amount of power, as in national defense maybe, and then maybe the power to resolve conflicts through courts or whatever, go from that level all the way down to basically being like a sovereign person, right? I'm my
Yeah,
own person. I have no obligations to any government, any state, anything else, and I reject any sort of oppression or tyranny or anything. And that's effectively anarchy. So I think that's probably as far down that road as you can go as anarchy. There's not really.
yeah, I guess that's true. I mean, yeah, and I don't know what the most liberal thing would be. Anarchy doesn't work for long. We are not a true, like, pure anarchy does not work because we're not a people do not do well alone and living by without having some kind of rules. We make our own rules.
Right. Anytime you're in a situation where you're mixed in with other people, there's going to be some form of chain of command. Effectively, there's going to be some sort of rules, some understanding of how things are to operate, and that effectively is a government. So,
Yeah. And
um,
then we don't go that far the other way because you can see as when everybody has their limit when they feel like they've been oppressed enough for long enough, there is some kind of revolution and some kind of change to loosen up the rules.
right,
And
and
we
that
just kind
happens
of
all the time.
yeah, we just kind of do this, like we're like not waves in an ocean, but we're like waves in a swimming pool where someone splashes and it just keeps going back and forth and people are just splashing all around and you're trying to follow the wave, and that's how most societies kind of go. They just keep going back and forth in some way, and there are barriers to how far left or how far right any society will go. Like we're never going to go anarchy in the US with as many people that live in the US. Even if the government completely collapsed, there will be smaller governments they'll pick up.
Right. Yeah. And some libertarians are fine with that idea of smaller governments and smaller localized governments. Like Ron Paul, for example, was in favor of states' rights when it came to certain issues. So having states having complete autonomy in deciding certain things for themselves. So that's not
Yeah.
contrary to libertarian belief in some ways. But what is, I guess, we could talk about that later.
Yeah.
I want to talk about war and global politics and
We
the.
we can get into a lot of stuff, and this is actually the our political, what is it? Political, not actually like US current politics, but just political theory
Right.
between Adam and me. This is probably where this and music is probably where our ranges are the widest, or I feel.
Probably politics. Well, even with religion and music, and I don't think we're that different as far as music goes. I think we're kind of aligned in some ways because we grew up together, right? We grew up on the same
Yeah.
stuff. So,
Though I will say, like, I did change a lot in like the late aughts, whatever we call that decade, in the teens, if you want to call it that decade, and the type of music I started listening to, and
all right. So we've talked about religion a little bit. We've talked about politics a little bit. We talked about music a little bit. Um, I think we can wrap it up by just talking about, I don't know, you want to talk about like your personal philosophy or
uh,
how you view life or anything or what?
yeah. Do you want to go first? Do you want me? I guess you just asked me to go first.
Yeah, you can go. Go ahead.
Okay. So, my personal philosophy and way to view life. In this essay, I will now. Uh, so I am what a lot of people would call a postmodern humanist, in a way, slash liberal Christian, quote unquote. If that makes any sense. So I have not defined any of those terms, have I?
No.
Adam is currently shaking his head back and forth. No, because Adam forgets that this is an audio recording.
No.
Okay,
Please
so
define some of those terms so people
okay,
understand what you're talking about.
so liberal Christian is the one that I said is very hard to define. So let's start with that one. No, so Christian, person who follows Jesus. Now, that means I use the tenets of the Bible to an extent, like we all do. But that is like my philosophy is like follower of Jesus. Kind of like Sermon on the Mount, I think is very important. That's more of the liberal Christian aspect. Is the Sermon on the Mount is what you follow, which to me is simple, is um, summed up in one passage, Matthew 24, I think. Uh, Love God with all your heart, soul, and mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. And that's when people ask me, like, what is my beliefs on what it means to be a Christian or follower or godly person. It's what is those two things: love God, love neighbor, and I also put love self. So love God, love neighbor, love self. What is neighbor? Neighbor is anyone. So love people,
Mm-hmm.
love the community that you're in, and I think that also includes like nature. Like, don't go around destroying all nature. So that's the liberal Christian part. Like, uh, don't go around abusing animals just because.
Mm.
Like, there is, I put a very distinct view on hunting for sport and hunting for food.
Mm-hmm.
And hunting for survival is probably the noblest of those because I don't need to hunt for food.
Right. Most people don't.
I love deer meat. Deer meat is freaking tasty. Do I need to eat it? No. I can go to Kroger and get my get anything I
Venison.
want except for deer meat. I don't think deer meat's served at my local Kroger. Is it venison? I couldn't remember if that's what it was called.
I don't know. They may have it at Whole Foods though. I want to check.
No, that's true. I don't like going to Whole Foods. The Whole Foods where I live is in a terrible place. Like, getting in and out of it is impossible.
Yeah, it
Anyway,
is.
I'm an American. I would like my convenience. So what did I say? Humanist. Humanist means that humans can do good. We are, by definition, are good.
Mm.
We just sometimes choose to do very bad things. But there is no such thing as we're all bad, terrible people. No, we are by nature good. And that falls into my Christian philosophy, because if we're made in the image of God and we're naturally terrible, then they are saying God's terrible. So it kind of falls apart, especially since original sin isn't. I haven't found it in the Bible. But hey, somebody else may have. Actually, a lot of people have.
I mean, you can make it up as you go along. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
That's what most
and
people do with their religion anyway. They just make it up as they go along.
and most Christians don't follow all of the Bible. I don't know any Christian that says any part of the Bible, every single part of the Bible is just as important as others. We all pick and choose whether we're Jesus Christians or Paul Christians, and we can get into what I meant by that in the future.
I know what you mean by that. Don't worry about it. We'll go into it later.
So yeah, we'll get into that later on, more definition. Postmodern means I don't believe there is a universal truth, but our truth is made in our own communities. So that means like what is true for you and what is true for me aren't always the same, but we come together to make our truths. We come together to make our rules. We come together to make our laws. We come together to make our structure. And so that's where we find truth, is in our community.
Or we come together to kill each other.
That's not really coming together. But come together to kill other people. But yeah, like there's not like something that's always right or something that's always wrong. There probably are things that are always right and always wrong in every situation that I'll ever see them. But our truths and our morals always are formed in like our communities.
Mm-hmm.
That's the easiest way of defining that, where people are like, you don't believe anything's real. You believe that numbers don't exist or that green is not green. It's like, no, that's not what postmodern and the lack of universal truth. There are certain things that I believe green is green, or that like grass is green, or most grass is green, I guess I should say, or that green lights are green because that's what our community has said. Our community of humans said this color is green, therefore it's green. We define that. Color doesn't exist unless we define it. Nothing exists unless we define it.
Right. I was going to, jump to that.
So that's my philosophy. Your turn.
So I don't know what labels to assign myself.
Jerk. Sorry.
You can go with that. Yeah. Idiot is one. Maybe I'm not nearly as intellectual as you are, I don't think.
Over here with a master's degree, I'm not nearly as intellectual as you are.
Well, I mean,
he's literally wearing his cap and tassel. You can't see this, so I can just make anything up. He's smoking out of a pipe and reading Plato's
Allegory of the Cave.
Thank you. Obviously, my philosophy of knowledge is great that I know any Plato book.
No, I think it's unfortunate that, not unfortunate, what's the word? We are born into a pre-existing system, and we are defined by that system. So everything you say about who you are is meaningless without knowing how who you are has been shaped by the things that have happened to you, or the things that are around you, or the things you've been taught, or the things you've just picked up. So I don't know what label to assign myself. I just think that I agree with a lot of what you said, actually. I don't think that I would at this point consider myself a Christian, but I think Jesus was a cool dude, cool, spread good news, take care of people, all good ideas. But I don't think I consider myself to be like a follower of the Christian faith anymore. I don't think I follow any faith in particular. I don't know. What would you label me as if you were to guess? Because you know me long enough.
That is a hard one. I put you in the agnostic category, but agnostic is not an actual category.
No. And I don't think I consider myself agnostic, because I think that I reject. Well, in order to be considered agnostic, you'd have to understand what somebody means when they talk about God. Because when you talk about God, if you're a Christian, you're talking about an idea of God that you've created through, or that your religion has created for you. And when I talk about God, I could be referring to something completely different, depending on my influences and what I've read and what I've come across. So, no, I don't consider myself agnostic. I consider myself apathetic. I I don't really have any strong opinions about anything religious at this point at all. I just think that I do think there's something else after this version of existence that we're experiencing in this moment in time. I think there is something else after that, but what that is, I think it's pretty presumptuous for anyone to try and put a label on it or to try and define it in any way, because nobody really knows. So is that agnostic? I don't know.
That it goes into agnostic in a sense of that you don't know and you can't make any decisions, so you're not going to try. That's agnostic. Like, you don't know, you can't possibly know, so therefore you're not going to try. So
don't you think it's a little like, or no, don't you think it's really presumptuous and self-centered and narcissistic for us as humans to invent religions, to point to something we have no idea what it is and define it ourselves and live our lives by that? Don't you think there's an issue with that?
Well, a lot of our religions come from, I think this is getting into some future topics. Like, a lot of our religions comes from things that have happened to people in the past. Like, people see visions and therefore they start a religion based on it. Who was Jesus of Nazareth? That is a great question. Some people don't believe he was a real human. I do believe he was a real human, no matter how you look at it. It just seems like the evidence is there. But the question is not whether or not he lived for a lot of people. It's what happened after he died.
Right.
And they say, well, he was a miracle worker. Well, there was a lot of miracle workers at the time, yes. And so we kind of get into stories that are created, stories that happen, and events that we experience and are important because something happened. As people say, like, we can say Jesus wasn't the Messiah, Jesus died and he stayed buried, but something happened at Pentecost. And what that was is what started the Christian faith. Mm-hmm. Like, the Christian faith wasn't started by Jesus. It was started after Jesus, about Jesus. Right. And in the Bible, it talks about in the day of Pentecost, that's when a bunch of people were converted, where they, like, 10 times larger, their numbers grew. Probably, I guess, be a nice estimate, because they had like 70 to 300 people maybe, and then suddenly they got like 2,000 to 3,000 people that day. So somewhere around there in the probably mid 30s to mid 40s AD or CE.
Cut your dog out.
Yes. Somewhere in the mid 30s to mid 40s, an event happened, something happened, and that's how that religion came about. And I think the same happens with older religions. Like, something happened that people saw, that people experienced, that started a religion. You could say it was a supernova they saw in the sky, or it was a comet, or it was anything, or it was just a lack of oxygen and people see the afterlife or whatever, or out-of-body experiences. But this stuff, real events happen, and then we try to make meaning out of it. And that's really the human condition, is, to me, is about trying to make meaning out of things. And that's what we've been doing. And religion is an easy way. Something abnormal happened. Therefore, what could it be? Well, it's something supernatural, because it doesn't make sense in our natural existence. So, boom, the supernatural is born. Because I feel like the supernatural and the paranormal are a little different. Paranormal, we talk about ghosts. Supernatural, we talk about like gods. And so if it's something that doesn't normally happen, something that's like a miracle, or that's how religions form. That was a really long explanation that involved.
Well, no, that's good. But so basing a belief system off of an event, I think, is a rational thing to do. Institutionalizing that belief system.
Okay. Rational.
No, I think it's rational. But institutionalizing that belief system and then turning it into a monopoly of power and a money-making or power-seeking organization, I think, is a stretch that humans have gone down for the past couple thousand years that probably has done more harm than good.
Well, I mean, that gets into like the politics. Like, religion in itself is not political, but the institutions are very political. We've created these governing bodies, and it gets into places like Quakers or Churches of Christ that are very libertarian, right?
Right.
And how they do their thing versus the Catholic Church or the Episcopalian Church, which is more authoritative.
Mm-hmm.
And then a lot of churches in the U.S. are kind of somewhere in the middle, like Baptist, Methodist, that go on a dual system where you have the general convention or conference, and then they break off into these subgroups like the Tennessee State Conference or Convention, and then they break into even smaller groups, and so it becomes somewhere in the middle in the scale of politics, and so
I do want to get into that at some point, get into the sort of politics of institutionalized religion, and talk about like why people buy into these things, and just a whole range of topics centered around that. Yeah. But that's a topic for another time. I think we should wrap up. What do you think?
I think that's a great idea. We've been talking for like an hour
and 10 minutes.
Oh, 10 minutes. Yeah, I think that's a great episode 0, or episode 1 or episode 17. You know how sometimes the series premiere gets shifted somewhere in the middle of the season?
Yeah.
So the introductions happen after you've learned all the characters and learned different stories about them.
Right.
This has been Jess.
Thank you for listening to NPR.
Next up, we discuss Mr. Rogers and Downton Abbey. This has been the In-Pencil podcast, because life is not written in ink. It can be changed. Therefore, it is written in pencil.